grand prize, an amazing season of winners. We met one guy last night. I think his name was Jim. I'll check later on. It was Roberson. I remember that was his last name. And he had 5 balls in the bucket. So he went 3-0 5 different times.
That's pretty remarkable.
Impressive.
Lance, I had somebody reach out to me that had six times. We've only done, 15 of these? 14? Almost half. He's gone 3-0.
We've only done 12.
Only 12, Lance. How crazy is that to go 3-0, 6 of 12 times?
I told Jim last night he was with his son playing that shuffleboard or whatever it is at Crestwood Tavern. I said, I need to put you on the payroll because that is beyond impressive, man. I mean, it really is. Because, we talk about just going 2-1 is difficult. I mean, 66%, you can build mansions in Las Vegas and live out there. You really can.
That was David. It was David, not Jim.
Okay.
My bad.
Came in from a rainy Thursday on the avenue. Thought I heard you talking softly. I turned on the lights, the TV, and the radio. Still I can't escape the ghost of you. What has happened to it all? Crazy summer say, where is the life that I recognize? Gone away. But I won't cry for yesterday. There's an ordinary world somehow I have to find. And as I try to make my way to the ordinary world, I will learn to survive. Passion or coincidence once prompted you to say, pride will tear us both apart. No, pride's gone out the window, crossed the rooftops, run away. Left me in the vacuum of my heart. What is happening to me? Crazy summer say, where is my friend when I need you most? Gone away. But I won't cry for yesterday. There's an ordinary world somehow I have to find. And as I try to make my way to the ordinary world, I will learn to survive. Papers in the roadside tell of suffering and grief. Fear today, forgot tomorrow. Here beside the news of holy war and holy need, ours is just a little sorrow told. But I won't cry for yesterday. There's an ordinary world somehow I have to find. And as I try to make my way to the ordinary world, I will learn to survive.
My concern was on this Monday morning that the season's over with, we'd have nothing to talk about. I'm kidding. I knew we'd have a ton to talk about on Monday Morning Live, either in a great way or a bad way, at least in the geography of where this show originates from in Birmingham, Alabama. Welcome into Monday Morning Live, presented by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. And if you were with us yesterday on the video platform, you saw the discussion leading into the selection committee's announcement and then the reaction, and we'll continue that this morning on a higher level as we bring in ESPN's Tom Luginbill. Luginbill, welcome in. Happy Monday to you. It looks a little cooler there where you are. We had a 70-degree December day with sunshine yesterday here, but a lot of talk. And, you know, this is a fan base down here divided by Alabama and Auburn mostly, but a melting pot down in this area of college football fans, and reaction is all over the board. Let's start first with the fact that Alabama is in and Florida State is out. Your reaction when you saw it happen, did you see it coming?
I felt like it was a significant possibility, Jim. I really did. And I didn't know if the committee would have the guts to really do it, knowing what the backlash would be. Generally, they have defaulted to the decision that will lead to the least amount of criticism. You've got a foreman on that 13-person committee that's a sitting athletic director in the ACC in Boo Corrigan. This was not an easy decision to make. I see both sides of it without question. I really do. I didn't really think, I thought, okay, this is what they may do. I actually wasn't convinced they would do it. I really wasn't. And my take was, if they decided to put Florida State in, and Rick Neuheisel and I talked about this yesterday morning, if you were going to put Florida State in, to prove the point that you thought you were taking the best 4 teams, you had to put them at 3. You couldn't put them at 4, all right, because they were undefeated, and you had to put them above Texas. And if you didn't do that, you were talking out both sides of your mouth. If you leave them out entirely, you are then essentially saying that the purpose of this entire thing is to win every single one of your games, be the champion of a Power 5 conference. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But because when we started this journey, the phrase, the best 4 teams, is probably something that if you look back on it now, they probably shouldn't have used, because it's so polarizing and it's so eye testy, and it makes for such a difficult decision that it puts a wrench in the works of what ultimately you try to look for in a championship team, right? A team that has won every one of their games, won their conference championship, weathered the storm, were able to withstand injuries, and did everything that you could possibly do, and you're going to leave them out. So an incredibly difficult decision. I can see both fan bases' side of it, but I will give this reminder, Jim, and I don't know if you guys have talked about this. In 1993, this very thing happened to West Virginia in favor of Florida State. Florida State had the loss. West Virginia was undefeated.
I love Danny Cannell to death. Love him. I think he is awesome radio to listen to, because I cheered for Tony Stewart in NASCAR. I like a little bit. I like a little bit of asshole in my heroes, right? And Cannell gives you exclamation point asshole sometimes. And I love that. It's very entertaining. And I'm listening on my drive in this morning because they're on at 5 a.m. And we're up early too. So I'm driving in, and Danny, being a Florida State guy, is wringing his hands over the decision. And I understand that. If it had happened the other way around, I would have been having the same reaction. But I had to tweet him this morning, or X him, or whatever we're calling him. I understand. Twixter. I understand the frustration, DK. But did you feel the same way in 1993 with those poor kids in Morgantown, where they were unbeaten, a top 5 team with their quarterback healthy? Their team was healthy, and you guys were ahead of them. And by the way, in 1993, I agreed with that decision too. Florida State was light years better than that West Virginia team, and
Yes.
just because West Virginia was unbeaten, I didn't think they deserved a chance to play in that de facto national championship game just because of the zero. Because Florida State had played a tougher path to get there.
Yeah, they had. And listen, I think it might have been our pal Cole Kubelik that had put something out yesterday about the combined records of the top 8 teams in the college football playoff, and the combined record of the opponents. Florida State's combined record was last out of all 8 in terms of the component. Of the opponent's record. So, I'm also somebody that feels like, because human nature is such a huge component to this, that you become a prisoner of the moment. And had the Alabama-Georgia game happened 4 weeks ago, had the Florida State-Louisville game happened 3 weeks ago, there may not be as big of a reaction today had the decision been made yesterday with the decision that was made, right? I think everybody watches that on Saturday afternoon and Saturday night, and it was pretty eye-popping. It was pretty glaring. Watching Florida State on offense was painful. Louisville played a horrible football game. Florida State was elite on defense. But you had to wonder, right? You had to wonder if, coming off of that game and knowing the very next morning, as a committee, you have to go make that call. And that's what's fresh in your mind. What is human nature going to do there, right? And listen, with Florida State, you could make an argument that you go into the swamp with a second and third team quarterback and you win. You play in a conference championship game with a quarterback that literally cannot function. They threw for 55 yards. I think he was 8 of 21 or 8 of 22. And you come out with a way to win the game. You can make the argument that makes Florida State's overall team all that more impressive. The committee, I think, looked at it and said, even with Tate Rodemaker, if he's healthy a month from now, what have you, against the other teams that they're matched up against, would Florida State be able to compete on a national stage against the other 3 best teams in the country on offense? And now, unfortunately, being Florida State, look at who they drew.
Yeah, Georgia, yeah.
Right? Oh, I mean, that could not have worked out worse for them.
No, but that is a playoff. Georgia, all due respect to anyone else who's in this thing, including Alabama, if Georgia was in the field, I wouldn't doubt that Georgia could run the table and win the thing, because if Georgia and Bama played again, we've seen it happen flip-flop twice, that the other team could come back and beat them, right? So, listen, I understand the sadness in Tallahassee. I've lived it in my life. I've watched my Auburn friends live it in their life. It seems like a lot of fan bases have lived it in their life where you think you got jobbed. And Florida State, if I'm a garnet and gold guy, I feel like I got jobbed a little bit yesterday.
Sure.
But here's the way I approached it, and I polled everybody at the Benz in Atlanta after the game. If a national guy or whomever was walking by that I respected their college football opinion, I asked him, I said, so Florida State wins tonight? Is Alabama in? And the majority of them were saying no. And I'd always do a follow-up question, and they wouldn't budge off of that because it was a Power 5 team. And I would always come back with this, Luke. I said, okay, are you judging this Florida State team as 13-0 Florida State, or are you judging them as 2-0 Florida State and how they looked without Jordan Travis? Because that's the team that's going to the playoffs. That's the team that will be there. And I don't think 2-0 Florida State, this Florida State team after Jordan Travis, not only do I think they're not in the top 4, I don't think they're 5. I don't think they're 6. You start discussing maybe they're there at 7 ahead of Oregon. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're ahead of Missouri. But they're not better than Georgia or Ohio State if we're judging them as this version of Florida State that they are going into the playoffs. They should have been lower, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I don't. I am curious, though, and I think it's healthy to have the conversation. Is what the committee did yesterday, Jim, is that right? Like, have we I'll be the first. Do I think Alabama is probably the better overall football team top to bottom? Yes, I really do. Is it right for the committee to take that team that didn't lose a game and drop them. Like
No.
that's where I have a real conflict.
No, we should have never had a playoff that did not include. It should have never been the number 4, right? It should have been 6 or 8. It should have never been the
Right.
number 4 with 5 power.
'Cause you're always leaving somebody out.
You're always leaving a possible Power 5. I mean, if we'd ever had, I mean, this was a crazy year to end it on. If we'd ever
Yeah.
had 5 unbeaten or 5 one-loss conference champions at the same time, we would have been leaving out a team that was worthy of being in there. I guarantee you, TCU and Baylor back in that day, that year, what was that, 2014, the first year? I'm
Yeah.
sure they're sitting
Yep.
there going, what the hell are we doing here? I mean, Ohio State's got their
Sure.
third-string quarterback. Well, they won the national championship. They did prove what team they were in the Big Ten championship game. But no, it's not right. We should have never been that. And listen, I'm out on a limb. Every time I say this, people say, Dunaway, no thank you. But I am excited about the automatic bids starting next year. If we had 5, Power 5 conference champions, that would have been fine. And had one at large and had a 16 playoff, we wouldn't be having this discussion. 5 conference
Right.
champions and a wild card would have been a great playoff. It should have never been 4. But everybody always comes back and said, okay, what if Iowa had beaten Michigan? Would you want that Iowa team in there? Well, if it's automatic bids, then yeah, that's the team that won the championship game.
They won the Big Ten.
That's
Yeah.
right. And we would have to stomach some upsets and some 3-loss teams being in there. But then there's no debate at that point. We could have 5, automatic bids and then that wild card. So we're going to 12. It's next year. But this year we're stuck with this system, and it's the history of college football is a lot of wrongs throughout history to try to get it right.
Did you ever think this would happen? Something like this would happen? I actually didn't. Last week I was literally carrying the torch that there is no way, given a second and third team quarterback, if that team wins the ACC and goes undefeated, they're being left out. I didn't think it would happen.
Yeah, no, I thought this would happen. Well, first off, I didn't think Alabama would beat Georgia. I thought Georgia would win.
Okay.
I thought Georgia was going to win the game, and that solves the problem, which is a question that's being asked in
Sure.
the chat room. So let me tell you about our friends at MyBookie first, and then I want to ask you these questions. But no, I thought Georgia would beat Alabama. 34-31
Yeah.
was my pick. So Alabama exceeded my expectations by winning the SEC championship. Now, I thought in my head if they did that, they would be in the playoffs all along. Listen, if you find a $100 bill on the ground, would you just walk past it and pass up a chance for easy cash? That's what, if you're not logging into mybookie.ag and you're betting with your friends or whatever, this is the best way to do it. Mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. You get a deposit bonus there and all the other benefits you get on there. You can play anytime, anywhere, anyhow, on anything right now, including the NFL and college bowl games coming up. Just use the promo code NEXTROUND and claim your deposit match, redeemable up to $1,000. Again, the promo code is NEXTROUND to claim your bonus. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with mybookie.ag. So the question that is passed on this timeline, so I won't give a name, 6 or 7 times already, and it's coming in hot and heavy today, is if Georgia had beaten Alabama, would Florida State be in, or would they still be out? Like, people are blaming this on Alabama, but a lot of people believe that it would be Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Texas if Alabama had not won, and Florida State would still be out. Do you think that?
Well, that's a really good question. Like that is a really, really good question, and I don't know from yesterday's results. I don't know the answer to that question. I would probably default to Texas being out, having lost to Oklahoma, and then having Georgia beat the team that Texas had beaten, Alabama. I don't know how much that shifts the landscape. I really don't. Because then it comes down to, and again, Texas' performance in the Big 12 championship game, uber impressive, as was their performance a week ago against Texas Tech. I was there for that. They obliterated the Red Raiders. And now you would be having the same discussion they had yesterday between Alabama and Florida State and Texas and Florida State. And maybe, given how the conference championship games went, and I go back to that, the freshness of having to deliberate right off of seeing it with your eyes and the impact that can have on your decision making, maybe Florida State still would have been left out.
Yeah. Let's run through these comments that are coming in fast and furious today, Luke, and we'll talk about everything else going on in college football. This is Monday Morning Live. This is one of those programs you need to set your alerts always on the Next Round platform. We pop up all the time, sometimes unplanned, and you want to be there with us. Remember to like and subscribe right there. Landmine Believer. Bama and Florida State's resumes are not the same. FSU only arguing point was the 0 in the L column. Every other data point, Alabama either a lot ahead or slightly ahead. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, listen, I think there's always value in the numbers. I don't think they always paint the entire picture. But what I do think is if it comes down to that and they have that in their favor, they're going to utilize it as obviously something to point to. I don't know if this decision had as much to do with that as it did to have with the eye test. Honestly, I think coming off of this weekend, looking at Florida State currently on offense, seeing and acknowledging the trajectory that Alabama was on since the Texas loss in week 2, I think the numbers played a role, but maybe not as much as the eye test did.
And listen, Alabama had a lot of warts, even though they won some games. That the game you were at, Luke, the Arkansas game, they let a horrible Hogs team. They got worse as the year went on, but a horrible Hogs team back in it. And there were a couple of times in the fourth quarter I thought that Arkansas could get away with an upset there. So, and then the 4th and 31, you can paint that as a resilient team on one side or a lucky team on another side against Auburn just a week ago. So it's not like Alabama dances through without any pimples.
Well, let me say this too about luck. Everybody gets lucky. And you don't get to a playoff, you don't get to a championship game, and you don't get to a national championship game without some luck. It is part of the equation. And it's okay to acknowledge that and say it. And every coach will tell you that that is true. You are going to have a ball bounce your way sometimes. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're going to have a play that's a statistical anomaly occur in your favor. And you know what? It just happened. That's part of it. People say, oh, they're so lucky. Everybody at some point who's in this position will need luck to advance.
Greg writes in, wins obviously don't matter, ! Bad day for college football. Your thoughts on that?
There's a part of me that feels that way because I know what goes into this entire thing and how hard it is to win one game, just one time, and then to go out and win all of them, and then also to do it when you're not at full staff, right? And you are, especially with the most outside of Jared Verse, the most important person, or Keon Coleman, the most important person on the roster at Florida State, and Jordan Travis. I do think it's a little bit of a black eye, but you know what? I thought you stated it really well, Jim, earlier, that throughout the history of college football, there's been a lot of wrongs to try to get to more rights than wrongs.
That's
right. But this one, I can see why it stings in a different manner. Anytime there is not a loss in that column, and you're telling somebody they have to go sit at home, that's going to be a very, very polarizing conversation.
Listen, I was never, some of these happened before I was alive, but 1973 did not. But I watched I knew the players Penn State was putting into the NFL, so they had quality football for Joe Paterno. But 1968, 69, and 73, Penn State unbeaten every one of the times and did not sniff a national championship the way we used to do things because their schedule, their strength of schedule, and the eye test wasn't the same. And they were putting great NFL players into the NFL. Mm-hmm. It's been going on forever. I referenced 2004 Auburn, where they were just told, and they were in the freaking SEC, and they were just told, USC and Oklahoma is better than you. And they didn't get a shot. They didn't get a shot.
They didn't get a shot. I'll tell you another one of a team that did, and it happened just because on that particular year, they were the only team that didn't lose, and that was the 1990 Georgia Tech team.
Yep.
All right. They had one. Well, they had one tie. Their non-conference schedule was poor, but they didn't lose. And at the end of it, there will be a lot of people. Bobby Ross would probably tell you there'd be a ton of people that would say, "Were they the best team in the nation?" Probably not. No, but they got in, and then they won it.
Yep. 1984 BYU, always we point to that one as were they really the national champions? That BYU team was damn good. That BYU
Oh,
team,
yeah.
I don't know if they were the best team in the country, but I'd like to have seen that game. The way the Bulls were paired up, they couldn't get that game. I would have loved to have seen BYU against whoever we consider to be the best team in the country that year.
How about Sark's 14-0 1996 BYU team?
Absolutely.
They weren't even in the conversation.
Never in the conversation. Jeff asked the question, Lugs, do you think FSU could beat anybody else in the top 7 right now? That's all the way down through Georgia and Ohio State. This version of Florida State, could they beat anybody in the top 7? See, I don't think so.
I don't think. Could they beat all of them?
Any of them?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Any of them? Right now, probably not. And I think the other part of this too that we have to acknowledge is Louisville laid a big egg, man. Like that if that would have been a competent team that could operate efficiently, we wouldn't be having the conversation probably right now. And so for me, like I look at it now and it's too little too late, but Florida State's lucky they weren't playing NC State.
Oh my God. Yeah.
NC State's the hottest team in the ACC right now.
Yeah.
And so, but no, I right now I don't. And that's why there's a part of me that really doesn't have a huge issue with this, aside from the fact that Florida State did everything that you can possibly do. And I think that's super duper disappointing. And not just for Florida State fans, I think for college football in general, that is disappointing because what type of message are we sending?
Yeah. Anthem, if Georgia had won, FSU is still out. It didn't come down to Bama, Florida State. Why is no one saying this? Thank you, Anthem. We're trying to echo that a little bit this morning. Blake says, all you need to know on whether the committee got it right or not was Michigan's team watching the 4th team pop up and their response. It was fantastic. And that's a fair question there. If Jim Harbaugh had a choice and, you let him do it in a way it wouldn't embarrass anybody, would he rather play this Florida State team or this Alabama team? He would choose Florida State 10 times out of 10.
Oh, the reaction in that room essentially yelled to the rooftops, oh, the committee got it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just the reaction of the players, and then they started clapping. Some boosters were there, and let's clap. Yeah, Chris,
they clapped like their crowd claps. Golf clap.
Yeah, it was, and it grew as it got on. Chris H., big LSU fan who listens down in the great state of Louisiana. I don't mind Alabama getting in. They're one of the 4 best. I still think Georgia is better than Washington. We'll talk about the games that we saw coming up this weekend. Washington, they struggled at times since beating Oregon the first time, but they flexed back on Friday night, didn't they? They flexed a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah. I thought they were really, really impressive. And they're so well coached. They're so dynamic on offense. And, their ability to run the football and Oregon's inability to run the football, I thought really stood out. And, that's a team when everybody for however many weeks we've had since Washington beat Oregon the first time, like all we talked about is how Oregon looked like an entirely different team and Washington kind of parallel. They just kind of stayed on the same plane, which I think is largely true. And everybody believed it except for one team, and that was Washington. And so, they just went out and did what they had to do. It wasn't pretty against Arizona. It wasn't pretty against Stanford. At times it wasn't pretty against Utah at home. But they just win, and they can do it in very, very explosive fashion. Now, I look at them, and I think you have to ask the question, who is the team that is behind the 8 ball the most on defense out of the top 4? And it is clearly Washington. They're not playing with Michigan and Alabama's players, and they're certainly not playing with Texas front 7 players. And it'll be interesting to see if that rears its ugly head, because we've seen teams like Oklahoma in the past, okay? We've seen those types of teams that are built in similar fashion to Washington struggle in the semifinal.
Yep. Hey, listen, if Washington's offensive line can hold up against Texas's defensive line, which I don't think they can, but if they can, you beat Texas deep, right? That's how Texas can get beat with Washington's receivers.
Yeah.
I just don't know if
and that's
Penix,
why they're good.
And I don't know if Penix can get enough time to get that 15, 20-plus yard pass that can beat them against that defensive line. A month to talk about that game before we get to the semifinals. A lot more of your reactions, and we'll react until the top of the hour after I tell you about a couple of great sponsors here, including our friends at Blakely's Bouquets. Listen, the holidays are here. Maybe someone just got engaged. I got a friend the other day, divided household, running down outside of Jordan-Hare Stadium. She loves Auburn more than anybody not named Taylor Corn. And she's out running, and her boyfriend at the time is a diehard Alabama fan. So on a weekend, when Alabama beats Georgia and makes the college football playoffs, what does he do, Alabama fan? He gets down on his knees and makes it the greatest weekend of his life by asking her to marry him. She says yes. You can send him flowers from our friends at Blakely'sBouquets.com. What a weekend for that guy, Luke. Alabama, that beats Georgia, ends the 29-game win streak. They get into the college football playoffs, and he gets engaged to a beautiful Auburn girl. Roll damn Tide, right? Blakely'sBouquets.com.
I bet that Auburn girl's not been in a very good mood though lately.
Blakely'sBouquets.com. Blakely'sBouquets.com. I can tell you the engagement ring does not have 18 waiting on 19 on the side of it in national champions. Get some good flowers from Blakely's. 205-579-4900. 579-4900. Oxmoor Road is Blakely's Bouquets. And also our friends with Who Is Coffee. Man, you want that great coffee that I wake up with every morning here on the show. You can get it, and you can get 20% off this holiday season by using our promo code TNR. Just go to whoiscoffee.com, or the easiest way to do it, nextround.store. Nextround.store, click on the coffee icon and order it, and set up a delivery plan throughout the year. Best coffee I've ever tasted right there in the TNR store. TNR20 is the promo code nextround.store. Lugan Bill for 30 good minutes to the top of the hour when we come back on Monday Morning Live.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
Are you ready to make this holiday season one to remember? Legacy Credit Union is here to make your dreams come true with their lifestyle loans. Whether you need a little extra cash for gifts or you want to take that unforgettable holiday vacation, Legacy has the right loan for you. With affordable monthly payments, flexible terms, and absolutely no collateral required, Legacy Credit Union is your trusted partner for your stress-free holiday season. Apply in minutes. Go to LegacyCreditUnion.com to get the financial support you need to enjoy the holidays to the fullest. Again, LegacyCreditUnion.com.
Restrictions apply. See credit union for details. Federally insured by the NCUA. The Next Round Golf Cart is here. Your chance to play 4 area golf courses for just $89. Get 18 holes in Cart at Limestone Springs, Cross Creek, The Meadows, and the newly renovated Woodward Golf Club. A $247 value for just $89. Get your golf cart now at nextround.store.
Looking for the perfect gift for everyone on your Christmas list? This is Wes McClooney, owner of the New Balance Birmingham store, and I invite you to do your Christmas shopping at the New Balance Birmingham store. Everyone needs new shoes this time of year, and they'll want stylish shoes that fit perfectly. At New Balance Birmingham, you'll find the largest selection and inventory for a specialty shoe store. We have every size from extra wide to extra narrow. Shop the New Balance Birmingham store on Highway 280 next to Chick-fil-A.
Tom Luganville here for Jack's Western and Outdoor Wear. For great holiday shopping for the whole family, this place is a must. Jack's carries all the name brands in boots, hats, and apparel, including the Kynes Ranch brand, as seen on Yellowstone. You might not look like Kevin Costner, but you can dress like him. Jack's also has the only Ariat shop within a shop in the state of Alabama. Come see us every Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Sundays from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Just look for the big red building off I-65, exit 304 in Coleman.
Hey, Lance Taylor from the Next Round to tell you about our friends at Gutter Cap. Gutter Cap's that patented aluminum cover system that fits over most existing gutters to keep out debris and eliminate that gutter cleaning. It's backed with a lifetime warranty, almost 20-year service record right here in Birmingham. Stay off that dangerous ladder forever. 45% off the retail price now if you call GutterCapBirmingham.com. Call my good friend Chris Stewart now, 205-823-2212. Cap it, don't snap it. It's Gutter Cap.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
IV therapy, B12 injections, cryotherapy, and compression therapy all under one roof. It's our friends at HydroLive. Mention Next Round at checkout. Save 20% off any service. HydroLive's got 3 locations, Homewood, Tuscaloosa, and coming soon to Greystone.
Back with you on Monday Morning Live. ESPN's Tom Luginbill with us. We'll jump back in with Lugs in just a second. Let me remind you that our friends at Way to Wellness will get you ready for 2024. We made it through Thanksgiving and championship weekend in Atlanta. Lugs, I had a $110, well, the money's not important, appetizer with Brown the other night. It was a 1 pound,
What?
1 pound lobster tail that was this big, that was then rolled and soaked in buttermilk, rolled in cornmeal, flash fried, and then chopped up for us. We've got pictures. I'll get Taylor to send it out. That was our appetizer.
How's your cholesterol, bud?
That's my friends at Way to Wellness that's going to get that in check starting back again today. That was before the steak and the sweet potato casseroles and the Brussels sprouts and the unbelievable cornbread. What a meal we had in Atlanta on Friday night. It was unbelievable.
Where were you at?
It was a place called Little Alley Steakhouse. Little Alley Steakhouse. Next time you're in the ATL, look it up.
Okay. Wow.
Little Alley Steakhouse. Brown finds the places, man. Brown finds some places.
Did you make him pay?
That one may have been a company meal. No, we paid for it ourselves there. But Way to Wellness is why I stay so slim when I eat like that with Brownie. Brownie can put some weight on you there. Way to Wellness can take it off. Jump into them, planforme.com, and they will help you keep the blood pressure down, cholesterol down. Sometimes it doesn't work, but they'll help you keep it down. They understand life comes at you fast. Check out Leslie and her board-certified team at planforme.com. No contracts, no sign-up fees. First consultations free. It is a planforme.com. Way to Wellness, your journey to healthy living. All right, couple of comments here, and then I got to talk a little bit about the games that were actually played. That's the only thing I hate about this. There were great conference championship games. Then the selection show happens, and when you come here on Monday, we forget about the games, and we're only bitching and moaning.
This is the news, though, man.
It is. It is. Michael says, and this is a great point from our buddy Michael Bills, who says Michigan and Alabama in the Rose Bowl, and 2 historic teams, 2 winningest programs of all time, but probably right now in this moment in history, the 2 most hated teams in America, coast to coast, from Maine to California. Hard to find 2 teams that would not win a popular vote in America with Alabama and Michigan. With what Alabama and Nick Saban have done dynasty-wise, and Michigan and the cheating scandal and what Jim Harbaugh talks about oftenly. He asked the question, who's America cheering for in the Michigan-Alabama game?
Oh, Alabama.
You think so?
Alabama. Without question. There is no doubt about it in this one. And I think Jim Harbaugh didn't help himself when he claimed that they're America's team. That's not what America is founded upon. What are you talking about? So I'm gonna go heavy and push my chips to the table and say America, under this current situation and tenure at Michigan, is rooting for Alabama.
Brooks wants to know Alabama versus Washington. That's who he thinks ends up in the championship game. So he's thinking the 2 lower. He thinks the two seed wins the favorite, and then Alabama upsets him. Could you see an Alabama-Washington championship game?
Oh, absolutely. I think the Washington-Texas game, but all 4 of the teams and who they got matched up against in seeding, I think are very, very evenly matched. This may be one of those few semifinals where we don't have a blowout in one or both of the games. We have a very, competitive contest. The one thing that you've got to keep an eye on as it relates to Washington, they have lived and thrived in a world, in a conference where you better be prepared to win the game on the last series of the game.
Yep.
One possession games have defined that conference because the quarterback play has been so good. Everybody can score, and it's a bit of who has the ball last. And, if you're Texas and you're going to try to put an end to that stuff, you're going to have to get up on Washington early and shut them down with that Texas defense, because Utah would be the closest one that I would compare to Texas, but I think Texas is a better overall. Listen, Texas is the number one ranked rush defense of the Big 12, but they're also the number one ranked third down defense in all of college football. I mean, opposing teams are only converting 26% of their third down. So think about how many more series per game Texas is getting on offense because of what Texas does defensively. That's the game within the game, in my opinion, on a surface level look, as we're a month out, where Washington's going to have to stay on the field offensively in order to beat Texas.
Yeah, and when you have that kind of rush defense, right, and it's 3rd and 3 or plus, it's hard to run it, so you got to throw it. And with that defensive line, they are so good on third down. They pressure you. Saw that in person in Tuscaloosa when they beat Alabama. On what you just said there are people that are saying Georgia just really, because of their dominance, had not been put into a situation like they were with Alabama, and they faltered down the stretch. I didn't see that on Saturday, and I hear people saying that Georgia hadn't been tested in some close games, like Alabama had this year. So when it was down to crunch time, but I thought Georgia forced the issue on Alabama on Saturday, and they kept answering. But Alabama, they stayed aggressive offensively, and that surprised me a little bit. After Georgia, I think, cut it to 3, they came right out and were aggressive and marched it down the field for that touchdown that ended up deciding the game. I was impressed with Georgia, how they hung in there, and they had not been in that situation in a long, long time.
Yeah, I heard some folks, we had some callers yesterday on Sirius XM state that, I didn't think, Alabama or Georgia, either of them looked all that great. I said, yeah, but you're playing them against each other. Like if we're talent's equitable and coaching is on par, and the margin of error is so small because the difference in athlete is an eyelash, right? So and you've heard me say this so often, it may not, in those types of games, it may not be pretty, and it doesn't come down to how many plays you make. It comes down to what is the error that you make and when do you make it? Does it change the game? And I think Georgia just didn't play as good as Alabama, and you can acknowledge that by saying neither team played one of their better games. But to your point, like that 3rd down and 4th throw that Jalen Milroe made, where he almost pushed it from his chest to the approach line of scrimmage to Isaiah Bond on the dart route, that was the best throw of the day. I don't even think anybody's really mentioned it. Because to make that throw, number one, you got to see him, you got to get it through traffic, and it's not a natural release point for the quarterback. I thought that was a phenomenal throw. But the bottom line is, Georgia had to play a better schedule than people gave them credit for. Remember, all we talked about in the offseason, look at Georgia's schedule, Okay, well, down the stretch, that schedule ended up having a lot of teams that were ranked.
Yes.
Right? Florida was ranked at the time. Tennessee was ranked at the time. Missouri was ranked at the time.
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss right there. So I just think, this game, those two teams, the level of player in which they're playing with, which is so more in-depth and talented than everybody else, that when they play each other, it's a knockdown, drag 'em out. Like, I thought we were watching a national championship type game on Saturday when that game was on the field.
Yeah. Some people in their head thinks we were, but some people thought that was the two best teams playing each other. Last year, Alabama was left out, and I thought deservingly so. And then they went and beat Big 12.
Didn't mean they weren't one of the 4 best teams.
Doesn't mean they weren't one of the 4 best teams. They went and beat Kansas State. But this year, even more than last year, I feel like we're leaving out a team in Georgia that could win a national championship. And when we go to 12 teams, I don't know what the lowest seed team will be that will eventually win a national championship as history lays out. But Georgia would come in at the very highest seed as a 5 in the future, right? Maybe a 6, but a 5 or 6, wherever they would end up in this thing. And I think that team is good enough to win a national championship through that 12-team format. So this is the first time I can remember in the 4-team model leaving out a team that I think is good enough to run the table. Like last year's team, Alabama was good. I think in the 14 playoffs, somebody would have gotten them, probably Georgia. But this year, I feel like Georgia, I think they could win this thing. They may not be able to, but I think they could win this thing, and they're not going to be in it.
I think we're leaving out 2, potentially 3 that are actually capable of winning a national championship. And let's not forget in all of this, you're referencing Georgia. This is the same committee that a year ago, with the loss to Kansas State in the Big 12 title game, kept TCU in. We know what happened to TCU.
Yep.
This committee was not only faced with a decision to not include Florida State, they just dropped the number 1 team all the way out that is so far and away better than TCU ever was, as we now know, right? But they wouldn't have been forced to be in that position a year ago because there wasn't the Ohio State sitting out there, the Florida State-Texas dilemma, the Texas-Florida State dilemma, and then obviously Georgia. You didn't have that set of circumstances with other teams. But still, to me, like, I think that's one thing that's getting glossed over here a little bit is we're not acknowledging the fact that Georgia, like, literally tumbled. Does anybody actually think that Georgia is not one of the top 4 teams in the country?
Absolutely not. And nobody's going to feel sorry for them, right? Because everyone's
and nor
crying.
Should we.
I do. Everyone's crying about Florida State, so that's going to take up the headline space. But that Georgia team and that Georgia fan base walking in to Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday was the dominant number 1, had been that way for a long, long time, for all season. They were the cream of the crop. They were the top in the college football world and trying to do a three-peat, never done before in the poll era. Trying to do a three-peat. And 60 minutes of football later, they're 6th in the country, and all of a sudden you almost aren't even a citizen of the college football elite anymore. Come on. That Georgia program is not going anywhere, in my opinion, and they are still one of the 4 best teams. They being left out probably is equal, if not more of a greater crime than Florida State being left out.
Can you imagine? Just close your eyes for a moment and envision this in your head. What if Georgia was playing Louisville in the SEC title game?
I mean, Georgia would be the number 1 seed. The 4 seed would be going to New Orleans, whoever the 4 seed would be, to play Georgia. They would beat their eyes out. Beat their eyes out.
Yeah, it would not. It would have been what we call an NFC.
Yeah.
A no freaking contest.
Yes. I appreciate your discretion, but we are not FCC regulated, but I know ESPN.
We're a family-friendly program.
There are some kids on the way to school, but I appreciate it would be an NFC, an NFC South, if you will, in that situation. The show brought to you by our friends at Gutter Cap. We'll get your reaction all the way to the top of the hour, right after I just breeze through some of the actual games that were on the field. By the way, our buddy C-Stu and Gutter Cap, your leaves are probably already down now. We're into winter. Christmas is coming. They're probably clogged in your drains if you've never had them capped. Next big rain we get here in the South, you're going to have a waterfall coming over, and that's not good for anything in your house. Our friends at Gutter Cap will patented aluminum cover system one time. After they clean out your gutter one last time, they'll cover those gutters. You'll never have to worry about it again ever. Comes with a lifetime warranty. And they've been local here for 30 years. Stay off the dangerous ladder forever. Get 45% off the retail price just because you watch us on Monday Morning Live. GutterCapBirmingham.com. GutterCapBirmingham.com is the website. Or call our buddy C-Stu right now. 205, he's eating his Captain Crunch right now. 205-823-2212. 823-2212, our friends at Gutter Cap. Before we get back to the comments, just quickly through the games. Let's go back to Texas, who just blew through Oklahoma State. Big 12 Coach of the Year Mike Gundy could not stay on the field with Sarkisian and the Horns in this game. Quinn Ewers is looking healthier, and that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. He's looking healthier, and I think one of the things that shows you why Texas is a championship caliber team is at the time Jonathan Brooks got injured, he was legitimately, from a production standpoint, a true dark horse Heisman candidate. That's how good he was playing. And then they had the depth behind him. He goes down, they don't miss a beat in their run game. And they're doing it with a variety of different backs. Quinn Ewers, to your point, is healthy. JT Sanders is an absolute nightmare on the inside. Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and then that defense. I mean, that looked like a hot knife through butter on Saturday, and there were no answers for Oklahoma State. And so credit Texas. I think the number one thing I keep pointing to, and I said this to Sark in person, that I thought the most impressive thing he's done is he finally got that program and that team to deal with success and to take it and embrace it and run with it and not get caught up in it and then find yourself on the losing end of a game that you should not lose. And they have found ways, a variety of ways to win games. They've won games on the ground. They've won games on the special teams. They've won games through the air. They've won games because their defense just suffocated you. They've had to win games late. They've won games in blowout fashion. I mean, they've run the gamut. So they're more than worthy, in my opinion.
The Michigan Wolverines beat Iowa 26-0. Iowa's defense made Michigan look a little sluggish at times in that Big Ten championship game.
Sure.
And there are people wanting to know, do you think Alabama's defense can limit Michigan like Iowa's defense did, make them look a little slow and awkward?
Yeah, because I think Alabama, as good a defense as Iowa plays, and the whole entire reason Iowa has the record they have is because Phil Parker must be a magician. And that's who I actually voted for the Frank Broyles Award, because I don't know how you get to double-digit wins with that team.
Right.
I think Alabama will be faster overall as a team. They will be more athletic, and their rotational depth will have less of a drop-off than Iowa. So the question that you ask is, do I think they will be able to have the effectiveness Iowa had? Yes. And not to diminish Michigan's skill position players, but that's not how Michigan plays. Like, Michigan wants to phone booth you. All right. So the challenge for Alabama, two things. Number one, they don't have to worry about an overly dynamic quarterback running the ball. He's a good athlete and he can make things happen when things break down, but I mean true designated run plays. And can you line up and control the line of scrimmage without ever having to add an extra hat in the box to stop Michigan's run game? That's really going to be, I think, what it comes down to.
Yeah, Deontay Lawson having a month to finally get that ankle healthy will help Alabama tremendously in this game coming up. And Royal Payne would like to ask you, do you think Michigan ends up having to rely on J.J. McCarthy's arm to beat Alabama?
If you're Alabama, you hope so. And that's not to say he can't do it, but that means that you have shut down the run game or you've limited the run game and you've got Michigan out of their comfort zone. Everything that Michigan does is heavy play action, right? They're not a big drop back team. They're not a clean pocket team. They're going to run the football. They want to play between the hash marks, and then they're going to come off the play action and take some intermediate and deep shots. So if he's having to throw the football considerably, then that's probably good news for Alabama. Now, on the flip side of that, don't forget that you look at Michigan's schedule at this point, and you look how down the Big Ten as a conference has been. There isn't a player at the quarterback position in that conference that even closely resembles what Jalen Milroe brings to the table in terms of challenges for a defense. That's going to be very, and I would argue that, okay, if you're going to have to face that, thank goodness you have a lot of time to prepare for it.
Yeah, and JB asked that question in the chat room. He wants to know the last time Michigan faced a mobile quarterback like Milroe. He's saying Justin Fields. A little bit of C.J. Stroud, though, last year, though, too, right?
Yeah. I think Justin and Jalen are a little bit more probably like sudden and explosive as true runners, whereas C.J. Stroud's a really good athlete that could create and make some plays happen, but they didn't want to do a lot of quarterback run stuff with him. But, yeah, it's probably just about in the Big Ten this year, it's been nobody.
Fast forward now. Here we go. MyBookie.ag brings you Monday Morning Live. MyBookie.ag, promo code next round. Get that deposit bonus when you use the promo code next round. MyBookie.ag. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. A lot of great questions here. Kyle McCord entered the portal earlier this morning before our show. Everyone's wanting you to react to McCord. Some Auburn people want to know, is that a guy that we should want at Auburn? What about Kyle McCord? Why and how is this guy leaving Ohio State?
Well, I mean, yeah, the why is crazy. I don't know what the why would be. That one's a head scratcher for me. So maybe internally there's some things going on there that nobody knows about. Maybe, quite honestly, he's I mean, let's be real about it. He's probably been tampered with, and there's a lot of money being thrown around.
Yeah.
And what if you find yourself in a situation where a lot of money's being thrown around, and Ohio State's like, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Well, I
Right?
mean,
I mean,
Ohio
there's-
State's got you know this. Ohio State, they don't have the Raiola kid, right? He decommitted. He's going to Georgia, but they've got a quarterback on the roster that some people wanted to see this year. I wonder. And you've been in the coaching circles. 15 practices coming up for Ohio State before they play Missouri. I wonder if they were going to rep that other quarterback to see what you have, and that didn't sit right with McCord.
Yeah, very possibly. And this is a huge head scratcher. I mean, I think Kyle McCord got a little bit of a raw deal this year from public perception and criticism. You know, he hadn't played. You know, he's young, and if you look at him overall, he actually, for a first-year quarterback, there's a lot of teams in college football that would say, hey, man, we'd take that type of production.
Yep.
So maybe he'll have a market value that will be up there. And listen, what is it? Today's the 4th, right? So today everything opened up, and by tonight and tomorrow afternoon, there's no telling the numbers that are going to be in that thing.
It's going to be absolutely crazy. Back to the Florida State angst after being left out. Multiple people asking, do you think the ACC commissioner and their schools regret signing up with the Alliance, which postponed this 12-team playoff by a year? We were going to have the 12-team playoff this year, but remember the Alliance, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC, maybe the Big 12, blocked it from happening this year. So it delayed it by a year. So we're 1 year away from the 12-team playoff because of that alliance that the ACC was part of.
Do I think it had anything to do with the decision that was made? No, I think those are two entirely different topics. Would it have had an impact on whether they would have been in? Yeah, probably so. But let's just say, obviously they formed the alliance, they pushed it off a year, but it really just came down to the decision that was made in the room yesterday.
Yeah. In that room, by the way, the Boo Kerrigan from North Carolina, the athletic director, 5 committee members. North Carolina State. 5 committee members have either worked at or graduated from ACC schools. Only 2 with any SEC ties at all. And it was not a very SEC-friendly committee when I was looking at it. That was the thing that was scaring me the most about Alabama or Georgia being hurt by that committee. So there was a heavy ACC flavor in there, which gets to the next question from a couple of people. Florida State in the summer rattled the cages of the Atlantic Coast Conference about the way payouts was financially. They threatened to leave the league. Michael Alford was very outspoken this summer about maybe Florida State exploring other options outside the ACC. And 2 prongs here. One, do you think that could have lost him some friends with ACC ties? And 2, do you think this only fast paces the possibility of Florida State wanting to leave the ACC for if they get a chance to the Big Ten or the SEC?
Well, number one, I would hope that's not the case where we've got petty grievances amongst each other that would have an impact on a decision with these types of ramifications. I mean, you talk about taking something to a personal level. I'm not saying that anybody's above it and that it couldn't occur. It obviously most certainly could. I'd be very disappointed in that. And then the answer to the second question is, where are you going to go? That's the thing. There's all of this talk, but to our knowledge, to this point, they don't have an invitation to go anywhere. And on top of that, the cost structure, number one, just to get out, I think it was reported was $120 million, but that doesn't get you out of the grant of rights. So now you find yourself having to fight and scrap and push through the legal channels and spend hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars potentially just to fight it without knowing what the end game is going to be or how long it would take.
Yeah, Tesla talks right. No need for FSU to leave now. They've got a little bit more money coming in with the way they divided up now the payouts in the ACC, and they're going to get the bigger chunk because of the 12-team playoffs they would be in now by being the ACC champions. A lot of people asking, did Bo Nix lose the Heisman on Friday night? I believe he's not going to win the Heisman now. I think he probably still goes to New York, but to me it's Jaden Daniels. I think Vegas echoes that. And Bo may actually slip to 3rd now behind Michael Penix.
Yeah, I definitely think those 3 will be the finalists. Did he lose it? I don't know if I'm convinced of that. Did he help himself? Probably not. But I don't know if Michael Penix, though, did enough to just absolutely overtake the entire field, even though he played and they won the football game. There really seems to be a strong sentiment for Jayden Daniels, and I think there's a lot of people that look at not only the consistency of performance each and every week of outstanding performances, but they look at that team and they wonder what would have been had he not been there. And I think from a human nature perspective, that carries a lot of weight, maybe more so with Jayden Daniels than it does with the other two, fair or unfair.
Yeah. Missouri and Ole Miss in New Year's Six bowl games, but so is Liberty. And there were some people joking earlier about the biggest scam in the college football playoff rankings was at the bottom. There's no way Liberty's schedule warrants them to be ahead of SMU. That SMU is, by the eye test, the better team and should have been in the New Year's Six Bowl, but they put Liberty over them only because of that 0 in the loss column. Sort of the same conversation being had at the top.
Yeah, it's the exact same conversation, and it's not applied there. And you're right. I mean, Conference USA is so down right now. And the job Rhett Lashley did, and to do it again, he did it with a backup quarterback on the road against a team that was vying for back-to-back New Year's Six Bowl appearances in Tulane. But we're not talking about a one-loss team here. We're talking about a two-loss team, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, Lugs. We got 60 seconds left, 15 seconds. Give me how do you think these two semifinal games play out?
I think Alabama, because they've been there so often and the path in which they have taken to get there this time around, there's a little bit of an edge maybe that they had been lacking a little bit recently. That gives them the edge early on the surface level approach. And then I have such respect for Kalen DeBoer in Washington. I've seen Texas too many times in person. That defense is a problem. I mean, a real problem. And so I would favor Texas slightly between those two.
All right. Thank you, Lugs. Appreciate everyone being with us on Monday Morning Live. 9 a.m. Central is when the next round starts. See you then.
Hey, Lance Taylor from the next round to tell you about our friends at Gutter Cap. Gutter Cap's that patented aluminum cover system that fits over most existing gutters to keep out debris and eliminate that gutter cleaning. It's back with a lifetime